What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, continuing my deep dive into the Grateful Dead's 1978 officially released live shows. And today I'm going to discuss, review, then rank amongst the other 78 releases. Road Trips, Volume 1, Number 4. This was an archival concert release series that was a little bit different than like the Dave's Picks and the Dick's Picks. And it was primarily they would pick, like in this instance, it's the 78 Winterland run. It was 5 shows, the first shows they did upon returning from their Egypt shows. But it's not complete shows. The road trips is generally hand-picked songs from like a run of shows, simulating sort of the sequencing of a live show. There were 5 shows in the Winterland shows. This is a 2-disc set. There was a bonus disc that you got if you ordered it really, really early. There was a limited supply of those. I've heard the bonus disc. I do not own the bonus disc. I'll kind of address that at the end. But the first disc is material from the October 21st show. The second disc is material from the October 22nd show, the final of the shows. It's subtitled From Egypt with Love, which I think is a little bit of a weird title because these aren't Egypt shows, but these are the first shows they did after returning from Egypt. So just kind of a weird, weird title. I think this was also released on the exact same day that the Egypt Rock in the Cradle box set was released, which the previous video I did. And in a weird way, there is a little bit of Egypt on here. They do the Ali Al-Ajid Egyptian composition. I think they opened up both shows, the 21st and the 22nd. We get the 22nd opening. And I believe it's only a snippet of it. I think it was a much longer. We get like 3.5 minutes. I believe it was a much longer performance or a much longer version leading into the first set. And in a way, it kind of holds up to both the 78 overall sort of narrative and the Grateful Dead narrative. The 78 narrative of their within any given show being moments of incredible inspiration and moments of sort of like, all right, they're just kind of filling in the boxes and, doing the bare minimum. But because they're so proficient at this time, it's not bad. It's just lacking maybe inspiration. And you kind of get this in this one, coupled with the other narrative, which is that the Dead never really lived up to those big moments. Seen a lot of like Halloween shows in my life, New Year shows in my life, Mardi Gras shows, Chinese New Year shows. And it almost always seems that in any of those runs, the shows leading up to the big event were the better shows. And that once we got to the big event itself, it was like, okay, that wasn't as good as the previous shows. And that's kind of what we have here. I think the 21st show and the material from the 21st on disc 1 completely outshines the stuff on 22, the last show of the run. Kind of fits that narrative. And this also fits the 78 narrative, where some of this stuff is fantastic. And then other stuff is like, yeah, they're competent. They're doing a good job. It's not bad by any stretch, but it's not something you would like use as sort of bait to get somebody to become a Deadhead. So I'm going to go through the songs and then I'll show where this falls among the other 78 stuff when I'm done. So disc 1 is material from the 21st, October 21st. You get 4 songs from the first set, and then the 5 songs from the second set, all post drums songs in the second set. Well curated stuff. This is a well curated disc. Opens up with a Sugaree, which was in the middle of the set. It's one of those Sugarees where like, it's a great Sugaree. Like we're in that extended era of Sugaree where we're like plus 10 minutes, flirting with 15 minutes. Each of those pockets of solos, you got the sort of almost simpler, more lyrical first solo. You have that grander, bigger, slightly more out there second solo. Then you have that more kind of atmospheric, moody third solo. Excellent opener, excellent song. The playing is great. Bob sounds fantastic at times because he is still live on stage learning to play the slide guitar. And if there is one complaint I have for a lot of this, it's that metallic cling of Bob learning slide doesn't always work. Now, there are moments in the Sugaree solo where it does, but there are also moments where you're like, just put it down, Bob. Just do what you do best. Um, but it's a good sugaree. However, it's not one of those that I would compare to like some of the epic 77 sugarees, which I think is a little bit of the 78 problem. You have really, really great playing, but if you're going to make like a definitive list of songs, you're not going to put many 78 on it because other tours years have better versions. That's like what this sugaree is. Fantastic sugaree. Love it. But it's not up there with some of those like iconic 77s, but a strong opener. Get a great passenger. Fantastic passenger, good energy in that. 78 was the year of the passenger. I think it was the year it got played more than any other. Really good. A nice Stagger Lee, kind of falls apart in the middle. It seems like they're maybe just kind of lost for a little bit. And it doesn't really ever seem to just kind of click. Like it's good energy, good performance, but it always seems like they're just missing that next level. But it sounds much better than the one that was in Egypt, which was like crazy slow. Nice Stagger Lee. Awesome to hear Stagger Lee. And then an absolutely fantastic I Need a Miracle. Song had only been played maybe less than a dozen times by this point. Yeah, I think Miracle had been played. It was like maybe the sixth or seventh time Miracle had been played. Really, really nice closing jam where Jerry's just going off for like 2+ minutes. Really aggressive, really good rock energy. Bob's having a blast on vocals. Donna's just wailing like crazy. A lot of good, like, I need a miracle to do this. I need a miracle. Bob's just like riffing vocally. And it was the first set closer, which I kind of wish that had been where it stayed. I think it works much better as a first set closer than, where it eventually ended up in sort of a post-space slot. But excellent version of Miracle. Yeah, Miracle was great when it was popping up in these weird non-post space places, and they really let that jam ride at the end. Then we jump to the second set, and we get a 12-minute version of Got My Mojo Working, which comes out of drums, very low-key, sort of percussion jam, the band kind of weaving in and out, very, Jerry kind of squirming around with some low-key wah energy. And we get about I think it's about 5 minutes of jamming. Yeah, and it's not until about the 5.5 minute mark where we finally get the actual song. Bob comes in with the vocals. Lee Oscar of War is on harmonica. He plays harmonica on here. He sticks around for the other one. He's got a little bit of harmonica on Sugar Magnolia later on. Nice flavor that's added. But this Got My Mojo Working is fantastic. They only played it twice, kind of teased it slightly in the following show. But it's really just got this awesome, great energy. The band's locked in on the groove. They're having a great time. Not really sure why this didn't stick around in the set list because it works and it works well. But it's really nice to hear. At one point, as they sort of like wind up, Jerry kind of forces the other one, like all of a sudden we're just like the dun 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 dun, and we're off into a kind of a pretty low key other one jam. This other one doesn't really get a lot of fire going. It's almost like Jerry is kind of forcing the segue, but then they all kind of slide into it. We get some nice about 2.5 minutes of jamming before we get the vocals. And the middle jam is pretty good, but it just seems like the rhythm section is keeping things grounded kind of low, and Jerry's trying to like break free but just can't. So he's constantly playing, he's constantly pushing the envelope, but he never actually breaks free of the envelope. So there's this somewhat restrained feel to the other one. And then we get the second set of vocals, and then Jerry just goes crazy. As soon as those are done, Jerry's like, forget this, I'm taking off. It's almost like in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's like all of a sudden at the end, he just breaks the window and runs, and the band's like, oh wait, we got to follow him, let's go. And so the ending of the other one is just chaotically triumphant and loud and just frenzied, and just like, where did that come from? And it also helps feed into the narrative that Jerry feels restrained or in the jam in the middle. And then that goes into an absolutely gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, somewhat epic, absolutely amazing Stella Blue. Jerry's solo, it's just aching. It just hurts. It just starts off with these like really patient, simple notes, and then just kind of builds on the agony and the pain and the vocal performance mastery of Stella Blue. This is fantastic. And I think it works really well with that kind of feeling restrained energy that the other one had, because in Stella Blue, this is a bigger Stella Blue. Like some of these, you feel like the song's just barely hanging together, and that aids the emotion. This is one where the band's locked in, but Jerry's bringing it so well vocally, and he's bringing the guitar energy so well that like the sort of bigger, more like grander sound of it works well with this song. Awesome, awesome Stella Blue. Then we get a really well jammed out Sugar Magnolia and a really nice US Blues to close out the disc. Really, really solid disc. Couple issues. I think there's a couple patches in this. I think there's a kind of a rough patch in Stella Blue when the solo's kind of peaking and Jerry's like making his final ascent. We get an audience patch because they didn't have it. And so that transition's a little rough and it comes at maybe the worst time possible. But, you know, you just got to live with it. But yeah, a really, really strong first disc. And really, really, there's nothing bad on here. It's a pretty fantastic listen. Song choices are great. The Got My Mojo other one, Stella Blue, is just top-notch stuff. Even the Miracle, I mean, all of it. Really good disc. Second disc has its moments, but it also kind of is a good piece of evidence in the case for why 1978 is frustrating. Opens up with an Ollie Not a G. You get 3.5 minutes of that, kind of a drum circle percussion jam with the band kind of weaving in and out, you know, with this really nice, it's an Egyptian composition, really nice melody going in there. That eventually goes into Deal. It's not the smoothest transition, but the energy flow works well. The Deal is kind of a trot. It's not too slow, not too fast, but it's not a set closing deal. It's not that high energy. It's sort of a patient, here we are to begin the show type of deal. At times, the band seems lost. There's a moment between verse chorus where I think Jerry's supposed to solo and he doesn't, and they just kind of tread water for a while, and you're like, okay, what's happening here? And then Jerry's like, oh, wait, maybe I should just sing again. So it's that 78 issue. It's like, okay, the band was locked in and now they're not. Like, what happened? We get a really sweet Peggy O. And I think Peggy O, and there's a number of songs, and I think a lot of them are Jerry songs, that in things like road tapes, where they're not giving us full shows, but they're hand-picking songs and taking them out of context, I think they lose some of their power. I think Peggy O loses some of its power when it's not sandwiched between two Bob songs. Like, I think part of the attraction of Peggy O is like, we just heard Bob scream for like 5 minutes in Minglewood Blues, and he's probably going to scream for 5 more minutes in whatever follows. And Peggy O in the middle just gives Jerry this nice, like, hey guys, let me just tell you a little sweet story, rock in, and we drop a little nice solo. And it just doesn't have the same effect here when it's coming after a deal and before a jackstraw. But it's a nice Peggy O, really nice solo in the middle. Jerry sounds fantastic. And then we get a jackstraw, which was the closer of the second set. This should have closed more second sets. As much as I love it as a show opener, and I think it's perfect as a show opener, it's also a great show closer because it has that big bombastic closing solo, and Jerry brings it. The band pushes it. This is fantastic. Like, they close this set incredibly well. Absolutely amazing. And so that's what you get for the first set. The second set, you get a Scarlet Fire to open. Probably the highlight of the Scarlet Fire, the Scarlet Begonias, is that middle solo. They're really bringing the energy. Jerry's pushing the envelope in that middle solo, that one that's between verses. I think we're missing a verse. I think he goes, we don't go into the verse that usually precedes the solo, now I can't remember what it is, but it seems like Jerry jumps it first. But the solo is fantastic. He more than makes up for it with a really good solo. And then we get to like the end solo, and it's both with this and Fire. It's like the 78 sort of malaise where it's really well done, but it's really kind of chill. It really doesn't stand out from other Scarlets. I don't think you can compare it to some Scarlet Fires from 77. I think there's a lot of Scarlet Fires in the 80s and 90s, which maybe are better than this. But it's not bad. It's just everybody seems content to just like ride along and follow Jerry, and Jerry's content to just like explore for a little while, but it doesn't really feel like they're pushing any really crazy envelopes. As we're the sort of meltdown jam into the fire segue is really good. Jerry starts playing like these arpeggiated chords and kind of brings this lot of winding, swirling motion. But then when we get to fire, like everybody stops playing but the drummers, and the drummers just kind of keep this beat going until all of a sudden we're like doom doom, we're into the fire vamp. And it's pretty chill. This is one of those, like, I think when people think of the Dead, or sort of, you know, the stereotype version of Deadheads is like eyes closed and just like dancing like this and swaying. That's what these Scarlet Fires are. Like, I could imagine myself having a great time at these shows, just standing there, swaying back and forth, losing myself in the music, not that engaged, but also not engaged, just kind of like really happy to be there. The second solo between in the fire kind of gets a little more heat, but then it also kind of falls apart and they have to pick it back up, and seems like they're always trying to make it work, and it never does. So we get Scarlet Fire, we skip a bunch of songs, we jump towards the end of the set, we get a Not Fade Away with John, I don't want to mispronounce the name, Cipollina, right, from Quicksilver Messenger Service. He sits in on the Not Fade Away. 21-minute Not Fade Away. There's like 8 minutes of this that is him just treading water, trying to figure out what to do. There's a frustrating good amount of time in the middle where you're just like, will somebody step up and do something? Like, what's happening? Are there problems on stage? Are they like trying to make John Cipollina's amp work? I'm assuming that's what it is. He never really takes off and shreds like you want him to. It's just, there's a lot of the drummers just trying to make things happen. It's really kind of frustrating. In the beginning, they're in the zone, and you can kind of feel like, okay, they're locking in. This could be good. But then it just, I don't know. It just gets kind of disappointing, and it doesn't reach the heights you're thinking this is going to reach. The end is fantastic. Finally, at the end, they get this great, we get a little Mind Left Body action, maybe a little trying to go back into like Got My Mojo Working action, but it gets this weird Mind Left Got My Mojo jam at the end that's pretty absolutely fantastic. So there are definitely moments, but you can maybe reduce this to like a 10-minute Not Fade Away, like do the Frank Zappa thing and just cut and slice and, you know, condense this and make it a little more effective. For the most part, it's just kind of a little disappointing, I think. And then that goes into a really strong Going Down the Road Feel Bad, which is always good to hear. We'll say this, the second time a Quicksilver Messenger Service person jammed with the Dead, I saw Gary Duncan play with them on that Halloween show in 91. Really weird run of shows because Bill Graham had passed away earlier. And it was kind of just a weird vibe, Oakland Coliseum shows. But during the Halloween show, really felt like some weird sort of psychedelic sort of wake. They played Spoonful, then they went into a Dark Star. The Dark Star goes crazy insane. Ken Kesey comes out and recites E.E. Cummings' Buffalo Bill, just starts screaming it into the microphone at one point. But Gary Duncan was pretty good there. And I remember at the time, him, and I haven't gone back and listened to the shows. I have this rule where unless it's officially released, I don't go back and listen to stuff I've seen. I like keeping these memories, my memories. But my memory of Duncan coming out is like, he was really aggressive. I'm like, wow, he's confident. Okay. And now I'm listening to things like this going, we're hearing other artists drop in with, you know, guest artists. I'm like, I like what Duncan did. If someone invites you on stage, like, go for it, man. Use your moment. Don't defer to them. Just like take over. So in hindsight, I like what Duncan did. Though at the time I was like, he's pretty confident. But yeah, I think the second disc is a disappointment. It starts off strong with that Aline Aubergy. That's cool to hear. But I think the Jack Straw is maybe the highlight of the entire disc. And the rest of the stuff just kind of leaves you wanting more. Kind of leaves you wanting maybe to search out other versions of the same songs. So where would I rank this among all the others? Wow, I've talked a long time on this. I have it right there. It's right at 5. I think it's a little better than the Rock in the Cradle stuff. There aren't any real like, wow, that was rough performances. And really disc 1 of this is the thing that's elevating it this high, because disc one is a great listen. Disc one is good. Disc one is them locking in, finding it. And then disc two is just like, huh. As for the bonus disc, I think the highlight of that, there was an estimated profit on there that I thought was really good. Other than that, it was like a Bertha Good Lovin', a He's Gone, If I Had the World to Give, Around and Around. But that was all about the estimated profit. But I didn't re-listen to it for this because I don't have it. And I don't think you can get it anymore. It was just available early on. But yeah, that's what I got for this. If you've watched it, if you've listened to this, if you have comments, thoughts, drop them in the comment section below. Subscribe, like, share, comment. I think we got one more 78 to do, I think, before we'll move on to another year. We're going to move maybe into the 80s and explore some 80s stuff for a while. Jump around, eventually get all the years. But that's all I got. Yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment, and go listen to this first disc because it's fantastic. Peace. Talk to you later.